Imagine sailing across a vast, unforgiving ocean for 3 long years. You are desperate to return to your family, your daughter, and your brand new granddaughter, the first English child ever born in the New World. You finally land on the familiar beach, but it's silent. Terribly, deafeningly silent. You run to the settlement you helped build, shouting their names. But the houses are gone. The boats are gone. The food, the tools, the people, over 100 men, women, and children have vanished from the face of the earth. The only thing left is a single cryptic word carved deep into a wooden post. This isn't a modern horror film. This is the true story of the Roanoke Colony, America's oldest and most baffling unsolved mystery. What's up, history buffs, and welcome to TSF History. We are the channel that digs up the past and brings the most incredible, shocking, and forgotten stories right to you. If you love unraveling historical mysteries as much as we do me a solid. Hit that subscribe button right now and ring that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. Now, let's journey back over 400 years to a time of ambition, war, and a ghost story that started a nation. The story of Roanoke really begins not with colonists, but with a queen and her courtier. It's the late 1500s. Queen Elizabeth I is on the throne of England, and her nation is locked in a Cold War with the global superpower of the day, Spain. Spain is rich, pulling mountains of gold and silver from its New World colonies. England, by contrast, is a small, scrappy island nation that wants a piece of the action. Enter Sir Walter Raleigh. Ambitious, dashing, and a favorite of the Queen, Raleigh dreamed of planting an English flag in North America. He wanted a colony, a base for agriculture, a source of wealth, and perhaps most importantly, a convenient port for English privateers, legal pirates, to raid Spanish treasure fleets. In 1584, he was granted a charter by the Queen to colonize the territory, which he named Virginia in her honor. But the lost colony of 1587 was not the first attempt. The first expedition, in 1585, was a disaster. It was an all-male, military-style outpost led by a hot-headed commander named Sir Richard Grenville. With him were 2 men crucial to our story: a scientist named Thomas Harriot and an artist named John White. While Harriot and White studied the local Algonquian-speaking tribes, the Chicotan and the Croatoan, and their environment, the soldiers quickly ruined relations. In a famously disastrous move, Grenville ordered an entire native village to be burned to the ground over a missing silver cup. This single act of brutal, disproportionate justice poisoned the well. The local tribes, initially welcoming, became hostile. By the time Sir Francis Drake swung by a year later, the starved and embattled men were so desperate they abandoned the fort and took a ride home. It was a total failure. Raleigh was humiliated, but not defeated. He knew his first attempt failed because it was a military camp, not a community. His next attempt, he decided, would be different. In 1587, he funded a new expedition. This time, it wouldn't just be soldiers, it would be families. 117 men, women, and children, drawn by the promise of 500 acres to call their own. This was meant to be a permanent, self-sustaining English town. To lead them, he chose the one man who had a deep, artistic appreciation for the land and its people, Governor John White, the artist from the first voyage. With him was his pregnant daughter Eleanor Dare and her husband Ananias Dare. But the colony was doomed before it even set foot on land. Their official destination was not Roanoke Island. Their charter was for the Chesapeake Bay, a more sheltered area with deeper harbors far to the north in modern-day Virginia. They were only supposed to stop at Roanoke briefly to pick up a small garrison of 15 men left behind by Grenville. But when they arrived at Roanoke in July 1587, they found the garrison post in ruins. The only thing left was a single skeleton, the bones of one of the 15 men, a grim welcoming present. Then, the expedition's pilot, a man named Simon Fernandez, made a fateful and perhaps malicious decision. Fernandez, a Portuguese privateer who was more interested in hunting Spanish ships than planting a colony, declared that it was too late in the season to sail north to the Chesapeake Bay. He was impatient. He essentially forced all 117 colonists, the men, the women, the children, off the ships and dumped them on Roanoke Island, the exact place where relations with the local tribes had already been destroyed. John White was furious, but he was powerless. The fleet sailed away, leaving them stranded in the wrong place. The colonists tried to make the best of it. They rebuilt the small settlement. They tried to repair relations with the natives. Their one ally was a man named Mantillo, from the friendly Croatoan tribe, who had traveled to England and back. He was baptized and named Lord of Roanoke by the English, the first and last peer of the New World. Then, on August 18, 1587, a moment of joy, John White's daughter Eleanor Dare gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World. She was a symbol of hope, a new beginning. But the hope was short-lived. Summer was ending. Their supplies damaged on the voyage were critically low. The colonists quickly realized they would not survive the coming winter without a major resupply from England. They held a vote. They had to send someone back. The choice was unanimous: Governor John White. He refused. He argued that it would look like he was abandoning them. He had just built a life here. He had his daughter and his newborn granddaughter. But the colonists insisted. He was the only one with the political connections in London to get Raleigh and the Queen to send help. Finally, with a heavy heart, White agreed. He said goodbye to his family, promising to return by the next spring. It was the last time he would ever see them. John White arrived in England in November 1587. It was the worst possible moment in English history to ask for ships. King Philip II of Spain had finally had enough of English piracy and was preparing a massive invasion fleet, the legendary Spanish Armada. Queen Elizabeth I issued a desperate decree commandeering all seaworthy vessels for the defense of the realm. White's small private relief fleet was seized. He was trapped. The year 1588 came and went. The Spanish Armada sailed, was famously defeated by the English Navy and a Protestant wind, but the war was far from over. 1589 passed. White was frantic, writing letters, begging anyone who would listen, but England was still at war. Sir Walter Raleigh had moved on to other projects. The 117 souls on Roanoke Island were forgotten. Finally, in 1590, 3 long years after he left, White managed to secure passage. It wasn't even a dedicated supply mission. He had to hitch a ride with a fleet of privateers who were only going to the New World to hunt for Spanish treasure. After weeks of raiding Spanish settlements in the Caribbean, the fleet captain finally, grudgingly, agreed to drop White off at Roanoke. On the evening of August 17th, they anchored off the coast. In the distance, through the trees, they saw a column of smoke, a signal. White's heart leapt. They were alive. That night, the sailors fired cannons and played English folk songs on trumpets, announcing their arrival. But there was no answering call.
The next morning, August 18th, his granddaughter Virginia Dare's 3rd birthday, John White and a small party rowed to shore. What they found was an eerie, silent ghost town. The settlement was gone, but it wasn't the scene of a battle. There were no bodies, no skeletons, no signs of a struggle or a fire. In fact, the evidence pointed to something far stranger. The houses had been carefully dismantled, taken down plank by plank, as if they had been packed up and moved. The heavy cannons and other items, too difficult to move, were left half buried in the sand. The entire area was overgrown with weeds, suggesting it had been empty for some time. And then he saw it. Carved into a large post on the palisade, the defensive fence, was a single word, in all caps, Croatoan. White knew exactly what this meant. Before he left, he and the colonists had agreed on a secret code. If they had to move, they would carve their destination into a tree. If they were in distress or were forced to leave under attack, they would carve a Maltese cross above the name. White searched the post. There was no cross. This was not a message of distress. It was a message of intent. Croatoan was the name of the island just south of Roanoke, modern-day Hatteras Island. It was the home of their only allies, Manteo's people. White's men found one other clue. On a nearby tree, the letters CRO were carved. They hadn't even finished the message before they left. White was overjoyed. His family was alive. They hadn't starved. They hadn't been massacred. They had simply moved. They had gone to live with the friendly Croatoan. All they had to do was sail 50 miles south. But the story takes its final tragic turn. As they returned to the ship, the weather, which had been clear, turned dark. A massive storm, a late-season hurricane, blew in with incredible violence. The fleet's main anchor cables snapped. They were almost dashed to pieces on the shore. The storm raged, pushing them far out to sea. The privateering captain, his ships damaged and his hold already full of Spanish loot, had no interest in risking his life and cargo to search for a group of colonists who were probably, in his mind, already dead. He refused to turn back. He gave the order to set sail for England. John White, a heartbroken old man, screamed and protested, but he was just a passenger. He was forcibly taken back to England, staring at the coastline where his family was, watching it disappear over the horizon. He would never see America again. He died a few years later, his fortune spent, never knowing for certain what happened to his daughter or his granddaughter Virginia Dare. So what really happened? The mystery of the lost colony of Roanoke has haunted America for centuries, precisely because John White was never able to go to Croatoan. This void of information created a vacuum, which has been filled with hundreds of theories. The first, and most likely theory, is the assimilation theory. The colonists did exactly what their message said. Facing starvation and abandonment, they packed up their belongings and moved south to Croatoan Island to live with Manteo's people. Over time, they would have intermarried. Their children would have been half English, half Native American. They would have adopted their language, their customs, and their way of life. They didn't vanish. They survived. They just stopped being English. The evidence for this is compelling. For centuries, the Lumbee tribe, a group of Native Americans living in North Carolina, have claimed ancestry from the Roanoke colonists. In the 18th and 19th centuries, explorers noted that many of them had European features, blue eyes and fair hair, and, remarkably, English surnames from the original colony's roster like Dare, Cooper, and Harvey. They also found 16th century English words in their dialect. This theory suggests the mystery is only a mystery because we are looking for English colonists, not their assimilated descendants. The second theory is darker, the massacre theory. This version gained popularity thanks to another famous Englishman, Captain John Smith, the leader of the Jamestown colony, which was founded 20 years later in 1607. Smith wrote that he was told a story by the great Chief Powhatan, Pocahontas' father. Powhatan allegedly confessed to Smith that he had ordered the slaughter of the Roanoke colonists. He claimed they had moved inland and were living with a rival tribe, the Roanoke, who refused to join his powerful confederacy, so he wiped them all out. He even supposedly showed Smith certain implements that looked English as proof. Is this true? It's possible. Powhatan was a ruthless leader, and it would explain the lack of survivors, but it doesn't fit the clues. Why leave a calm message pointing to Croatoan if you were about to be attacked by Powhatan? And why was there no Maltese cross? Maybe the colonists split and Powhatan only killed the group that went inland. A third, less likely theory is a Spanish attack. The Spanish in Florida knew about the den of pirates at Roanoke and considered it a major threat. We know from Spanish archives that they sent expeditions to find and destroy the colony. But the records showed they couldn't find it. By the time a Spanish ship did find the ruins in 1590, after White had already been there, the colony was long gone. The timing just doesn't work. A fourth theory is that they tried to sail home. Some have suggested that the colonists, desperate and starving, tried to repair the small pinnace, a small sailing boat, left with them and make the impossible journey back to England on their own. If so, they would have been swallowed by the Atlantic without a trace. This explains the disappearance, but it makes the Croatoan carving completely nonsensical. But in recent years, a fifth and very exciting theory has emerged: the split colony theory. Archaeologists, led by the First Colony Foundation, started to question if everyone went to Croatoan. They focused on a different location, Site X, a spot 50 miles inland on the Chowan River. This was a place that John White's maps, drawn from Native American intelligence, had marked as a potential site for a new inland colony. When they began to dig, they found something astonishing. Mixed in with 16th century Native American pottery were shards of English Surrey-Hampshire borderware pottery, a type specific to the Roanoke colonists. They found pieces of a gun flintlock, a sword hilt, and other European items. This wasn't a large settlement, but it was something. The current working theory is that the colony split. The main body, the majority, went to Croatoan as planned, but a smaller contingency group moved inland, perhaps to be closer to food sources or to make contact with other tribes. It's possible this group was the one encountered and destroyed by Powhatan, just as John Smith claimed, while the Croatoan group survived and assimilated. The story was also confused for decades by a famous hoax. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression, a man found a series of carved stones, known as the Dare Stones. The first stone was supposedly a message from Eleanor Dare to her father, John White, telling a tragic tale of sickness, native attacks, and the death of her husband and Virginia. It was a media sensation. Soon, more stones were found, creating an elaborate and heartbreaking narrative. It was later revealed to be a complete and total fake, a hoax created to make money. So where does that leave us? The lost colony of Roanoke is America's founding mystery. It's the ghostly prequel to Jamestown and Plymouth. But the truth is probably not as supernatural as the legend. The colonists weren't lost, and they didn't vanish into thin air. They were abandoned. Abandoned by their country, which was busy with a war. Abandoned by their governor, who was blocked by fate and a storm. And facing a brutal winter alone, they did the only thing they could to survive. They went native. They packed their bags, carved a message for their governor, and walked away from their English lives to join the native people of the New World. The real mystery of Roanoke isn't if they survived, but where their descendants are today. They are almost certainly among us, their DNA woven into the fabric of American families, a living, breathing reminder of the first lost chapter of America's story. And that is the incredible, true story of the vanishing of Roanoke, a mystery that has endured for over 400 years. What do you think happened? Did they all move to Croatoan and assimilate? Were they massacred by Powhatan? Or did they split, with some surviving and others perishing in the wilderness? Let me know your best theory in the comments below. I read all of them. And if you found this mystery as fascinating as I do, please give this video a like. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to TSF History and ring that bell for more deep dives into the past. Thanks for watching.